Hey, what's up? I'm Channel Pup Fanboy Supervillain. And there are a few issues with Shadow Generations, which only really made themselves obvious to me after some time and experimentation with the game. That is stacked on top of the experimentation that the game actively encourages. But I've spent hours playing the game as it's meant to be played and taking a little peek under the hood. And I managed to find some problems that I definitely hope will be fixed by the time we get the next 3D Sonic game. Now, I don't doubt that there will be bugs and glitches beyond just what I'm talking about today, and I do understand that no game is perfect. However, these issues here are ones that could become bigger issues if left unchecked. And obviously, I would hope that developers would strive to make these games as high quality as possible. Anyway, we're gonna go into it. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and you love Sonic the Hedgehog, this is the place to be. And if you want to support me further, the link to the Patreon page is in the description below. It's hugely appreciated. Thank you very much. Now, bringing things down to earth first of all, Shadow Generations is a fantastic game. It is also a major step up for Sonic in terms of polish, especially when compared to, say, Sonic Frontiers, where I had a laundry list of things that I wanted to see addressed. Shadow Generations did address a lot of that. The player controller now has smoothing, meaning that he glides along the ground rather than feeling like a bicycle without tires. The animation and overall presentation is a spectacular improvement from Sonic Frontiers. It looks like an actual video game now. And the White Space Hub world is a notable step up from the Starfall Islands of Sonic Frontiers. So it goes, there's a lot more than just that, but those are the big ones. Shadow Generations is the game that addresses nearly all of my biggest criticisms with the current iteration of 3D Sonic, and as such it is a spectacular game, but there are just a few problems that I really want to see addressed in the next title. So we're going to start off with the smaller one. Consider this a little warm-up for what comes next. Inconsequential QuickTime events. Shadow Generations is chock full of spectacle from the jump with some really satisfying QuickTime events, which I'm going to be abbreviating to QTEs. A great example of this being the missile in Space Colony Arc Act 1. Fail to chaos control and you'll get knocked off, and fail to destroy the missile, you'll be set back to where you were before, all of which having consequences on the player's time. It's not always do or die, but it does require you to actually act in that moment. Now, the little issue I have here is that there are timed button presses with a very generous timer, to the extent that you'd have to deliberately miss these. I think it would be awesome if there were a little area on this timer when it's the optimal time to press the button, and make it so that you can only achieve as high as an A rank if you miss that sweet spot, and that a good time on the stage and mastery of these QTEs is required for an S rank. But here's where it gets a bit worse. This is the real problem with the QTEs in this game, and that is the boss fights. The boss fights in Shadow Generations are brilliantly designed, I will not be knocking those, but the QTEs at the end of said boss fights are, well, not really QTEs at all, because there's absolutely zero consequences for failing them. It's effectively a fast-forward button. It'll cycle through the exact same animation with no impact on your ranking. In fact, I'd say it's rewarding to miss these button prompts, as if anything, you get to look at these splash page shots of Shadow just a little longer. But these boss fights are designed to test the various skills and powers you've achieved throughout the game up until that point, so it's weird that in this instance, the QTEs are set to baby mode. Again, it doesn't have to be do or die, even if we just made it so that hitting the QTEs are required for S ranks, or maybe have an animation of Shadow doing the same thing, just not as biblically hard. Maybe he could goof up a little bit. That would be enough to fix this. It's just a shame to me that the finishing blow for these epic battles ends up being totally inconsequential. Player input should always matter. So if you've got a QTE that the player doesn't actually need to participate in, you've just got a cutscene with a fast forward button on it. And really, what is the point? Now, lastly, yeah, there's actually only two this time, is the physics. Shadow Generations controls beautifully and demonstrates an excellent understanding of the flow state that comes with skillful gameplay in Sonic games. But I'd be lying if I said this game had a robust physics engine, because it does not. And that's because we're building off of the same physics engine as Sonic Frontiers. With Shadow Generations, your movement speed is pretty much irrelevant. You've got the spectacle of Shadow running up walls and around loop-de-loops, but It's really not that impressive when you consider that Sonic and Shadow are basically Spider-Man now. Sonic Frontiers also had this problem. That being said, Shadow Generations did at least make it so that you can no longer walk around the entirety of the loop-de-loop, now restoring just some semblance of challenge to it. But this still isn't good. Being able to just stop up here and just stutter about for a bit, and he's able to walk far higher than he should. He's past the 90-degree Rubicon. He should have been sliding before this. What is the grip on those air shoes? Now, loops being piss easy isn't necessarily anything new. They've relied on scripted sequences for quite a while now. They have been more of a spectacle than a challenge for decades now. In this case, I'm not talking so much about the loop, so much as I am just the physics of this new player controller that we were introduced to in Sonic Frontiers, and why I think it needs a little once-over. Despite having a lot of automation to help the player up inclines and loops, most 3D Sonic games still have a physics engine that can accommodate for loops and inclines. Sonic Colors has it, Sonic Generations has it, heck, even Sonic Forces has it. Sonic Adventures still required you to be moving at pace in order to run on the walls, but with Shadow Generations and Sonic Frontiers, it doesn't even require the most fundamental level of skill here. And that's a real shame because Sonic made a name for himself in the 90s primarily because Sonic the Hedgehog 1 introduced such a robust and interesting physics engine to the platformer genre. To abandon this entirely just feels kind of sacrilege. I felt really dirty capturing this footage. Now, with that being said, Shadow Generations does a much better job at building around this than Sonic Frontiers does. You're unlikely to even try to walk up this wall when there are so many dash pads that it actively requires more skill just to avoid the damn dash pads and walk up the wall like an idiot than it would to actually, succeed. Now, there are a couple solutions to this. Number one, make a Spider-Man skin for the character. Alright, but in all seriousness, honestly the long-term thing I would want to see is a really good physics engine for the next game. But realistically, the next game will still be building off of the groundwork of Sonic Frontiers and Shadow Generations, and I get why. These games excel at the balance of speed and control, so it could just be a matter of including a script in these sequences that doesn't permit the player to move around on walls or inclines unless they are moving at a specific speed. This actually exists as a code built into the Hedge mod manager for Sonic Frontiers by Hyper and Aremic, and it completely eliminates the problem entirely. That being said, I do think Sonic Team will limit themselves if they don't invest some time into creating a really cool physics engine and pairing that with the wonderful controls of Sonic Frontiers and Shadow Generations. I understand that realistically everyone is just going to be holding down the boost button, so barely anyone is going to notice, which is why this isn't a bigger problem than it is, but I'd like to be able to peek under the hood of these games without being met by unfortunate oversights. Now the thing is, for games like Sonic 4 Episode 1, garbage physics kinda killed the entire experience. Does this ruin Shadow Generations? Well, no, not in the slightest, because Sonic 4 Episode 1 existed as an approximation of the classics, where those games worked entirely around their physics engines. And in butchering the physics in Sonic 4 Episode 1, nothing new or good was achieved by that. Like, there's no redeeming qualities to Sonic the Hedgehog 4's overall controls, even though the physics in Sonic 4 Episode 1 are probably still better than they are in Shadow Generations. It's just, Shadow Generations doesn't really have any obligation to adhere to that kind of physics. But even then, this shouldn't be possible. There's only 3 Sonic games that spring to mind immediately where this is possible, and that's Sonic 06, Sonic Frontiers, and Shadow Generations. Really hoping that we're gonna kind of nix this problem next time. My same issues with the physics also apply to rail grinding. Now, rail grinding can be kind of a brain-dead mechanic in Sonic games, and Shadow Generations did at least utilize it effectively, also minimizing its dependence on rail grinding sections as well compared to other 3D Sonic games. But again, just because we've minimized this function doesn't mean that the physics should just make no sense. Like in Sonic Frontiers, you can effectively just jump on these rails at any angle and at any pace, and you will just be carried through. There is no fail state for rail grinding. You won't slide backwards if you go too slow up an incline. It's almost like these things have like an electrical energy that propels Sonic and Shadow forward. Again, just because the physics are no longer a major part of the challenge, doesn't mean they shouldn't be there entirely. And it's disappointing to see little details like this neglected, but again, it doesn't ruin Shadow Generations because Shadow Generations is built more around maintaining a flow state, precise platforming and navigation, and it does an excellent job with that. But a flaw is a flaw at the end of the day, and the less of these, the better. It may not disrupt the experience, but still, like I said about the Insomniac Spider-Man games, and they really did listen to me when Spider-Man 2 came out, let me suck. Don't let me get away with playing your game like a moron. It deserves a bit more respect than that. So while Shadow Generations thrives on having an excellent skill ceiling, that skill floor could still be moved up just a little bit. Just a few more inches. Let me fail to run up a wall. Let me fail a QuickTime event. Let me be garbage at your game and look like an idiot. Well, that's it for today, folks. Just a quick one, as I am in a very busy spot right now. I am thrilled to announce that I will be attending the UK premiere of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 on the 10th of December. I will be getting a screening of it as well, so I'll let you guys know what I think sooner rather than later. Depending on the embargoes and everything, of course. I want to do everything by the book. And of course, the Sonic movies retrospective will be continuing going forward. There will be Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and of course the Knuckles TV series too. Whether they come after the spoiler-free Sonic 3 review or not, I can't say. Christmas, am I right? Might as well rename it to Sonic season. Anyway, what do you guys think of the video? Comment below, discuss, and as always, if you've enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below is the link to my Patreon page, where for as little as $1 a month, you can watch these videos ad-free, download them, and get your name in the credits of these videos. You also get special shoutouts for the patrons in the $5 and above tier. We have Silver, Josh Strider, Big Mum, Gran Allen, Twilord, Coco210, Hey It's Classy, Jay Sevian, Ian, Chohenshin, KB, RT0, Carlex, Hypes, Sad Goku, Dare Denny, SSS06, Kale Bennett waits for Jen's Challenge Gate ranking. Yeah, wait till I get to $500 a month on Patreon, then we'll talk. Ken K, Mr. SP, Cyrus the Skeptic, Biotin. Did you know this entire video was AI generated? Don't listen to him, it wasn't. And Vera Wild. Thank you folks so much for watching, and to all of you at home, get out.